Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Hope you're all fit and well. Good morning also, as we're going to do all the time now. Good morning to the Snoop Squad down in Worthing. You guys might like to go and take a look at demolitionnews.com this morning because we have yet another exclusive story over there on the demise of McCormack Demolition over in Northern Ireland. I realise you've probably never heard of them, but it is a big deal, and it's a big deal for several reasons. First of all, they were a very well-established company that had worked not just in their native Northern Ireland, but across the UK. They were also the NFDC's only Northern Ireland-based member. But worst of all is the fact that it's another demolition industry company lost. What I do find interesting about this is I posted this story after hours last night, and while most of the responses I've had, and I've had a lot, most of them were the usual, how sad, they were a great company, what a great bunch of people. But I've also had an awful lot saying there will be plenty more demolition insolvencies to come. We're just a few days away from potentially finding out the fate of Scrib Group, but McCormack Demolition beat them out the door, and there could be more heading for the industry exit too. Worrying times, people, worrying times. So without further ado, I'm going to roll the intro, post the question of the day, and get this show on the road. And we're going to start with not necessarily bad news. I mean, it's news. We're going to start with some news, but we'll be right back after this. I'm going to throw over to the chat very, very quickly. Good morning, Andy Darvell. Andy Darvell, hope all went well yesterday. Gary Muirhead is saying, I'd like to congratulate the Worthing advertiser for reaching a milestone. They have now got five subscribers. 5. Wow, how will they cope with all that fame? Mark Whiting, good morning to you as well. There is Chris Ford. Good morning, Sodbusters. The Sod's busting a gut today. Well done, that man. Now, I was going to do this a bit later in the show, but I did meet up with Neil Edwards yesterday, and I know not seen Ken Hatcher in the chat so far, but I did ask, as requested, I asked Neil how Wales was faring at the moment. I won't tell you exactly what he says, or what he said rather, but I will tell you it kind of paraphrase to crap. Sorry about that. Yeah, great to catch up with you, Neil. You have sent me an email, but I think I'm missing a bit. So please try again if you would be so kind. Who else have we missed in the chat? Right. Okay. In actual fact, he sent me a link to the article. I've not read it yet, so I'm going to go and take a look at that between times. And there is Ken Hatcher. Ken, sorry, bad news from yesterday from Neil Edwards. Things are not looking particularly good over in Wales. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. Now, it is Friday, the 17th of November. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony. In today's show, Chinese manufacturers stand accused of excavator dumping. We're down by the river in Latvia in the company of a Kobelco excavator, and we're taking a quick spin around the London Build exhibition, which is where I was, where Neil Edwards was yesterday. Plus, on the subject of autonomous machines, which I know you love to debate, I'll be introducing you to Tara. But first, we're going to peer back through the mists of time to see what was happening on this day in history. On this day in 1558, Queen Elizabeth I ascended to the throne. In 1603, Walter Raleigh, the explorer, went on trial for treason. In 1855, explorer David Livingstone became the first European to see Victoria Falls in what is now Zambia and Zimbabwe. I realise that's the story, but did he? Was he on his own, or was there a party of people? And did anybody peer around the corner before him? Was he really the first European to sight Victoria Falls? In 1863, Abraham Lincoln began the first draft of his famous Gettysburg Address. And trust me, as someone that writes for a living, the first draft is merely the beginning. In 1933, the Marx Brothers film Duck Soup was released in the US. In 1970, a man called Douglas Engelbart, there's not enough Engelbarts about the place. In 1970, he patented the first ever computer mouse. Really? And there's been a lot more that's happened since, but this one left a real mark on me. So I'm going to finish with this one. Finally, in 1979, the two-part adaptation of Stephen King's Salem's Lot premiered in the US. I saw that on UK TV a few years later, and it genuinely, seriously gave me nightmares for weeks. Absolutely bloody terrifying. Scratchy buggers at the window. If you've seen it, you'll know exactly what I mean. Now, before we get into the real meat of the show, I'm going to remind you of our question of the day. Yeah, the latest question of the day comes from our resident quizmaster, Mr. Gary Muirhead, and it is this. What is the strangest thing you have ever eaten? Keep it clean, people. Now, I have the constitution of an ox, and one of my favourite things about travelling is the ability to try local food for the first time. So in my time, I've eaten both alligator and snake. Snake was okay. Alligator, delicious. But I guess the strangest thing I've ever had was when I was in Japan, and I had a soup that contained fish eggs. Now, I've eaten a variety of caviar and fish roe over the years, but these fish eggs in Japan actually had tiny little fish inside. They were delicious. I'm sorry, I make no apology for eating baby fish. They were absolutely delicious. But what about you? What is the most strange, weird, unusual thing that you've ever eaten? And just to be absolutely clear here, and I'm not trying to be PC because who cares? But I realise that a lot of this is driven by overseas. And I've always had this belief that people eat what they have available to them, which is why if you go to certain parts of South and Central America, one of the delicacies there is guinea pig. Not for me personally, although I'd eat it while I was there. And I realise that varies around the world, which is why I've never quite understood why us Brits are so squeamish about our local wildlife, i.e. rabbit. Rabbit is delicious. If you haven't had it, try it. And if you have had it, please back me up. It is bloody delicious. And it's out there. It's outside my front, well, not my front door, but it's certainly outside my back door. Rabbit, fantastic. Let us know in the chat. I'm raving now. I'm going to get onto the news. Oh, I did need to throw this up on. Ken Hatcher says to Neil Edwards, thanks for the good news, Neil. Yes, indeed. Let's have a look. We need to get rid of that. No, we don't. I pressed the wrong button. You'd think after all this time I'd know what I was doing, wouldn't you? Yes. So, you know you're getting on in years when you live long enough to see history repeating. So back in the late 1980s, when I first started writing about plant and equipment, Japanese excavator manufacturers were investigated over the alleged dumping of machines here in the UK. That accusation basically meant that Japanese companies were selling their products here at way below market value, merely to gain a foothold and to establish market share. Fast forward to today, and those same accusations are now being levelled at Chinese excavator makers. In response to complaints made by British manufacturer JCB, the Trade Remedies Authority, that's the TRA, has opened 2 new investigations into the import of excavators from China. The TRA will investigate whether these imports are being dumped or subsidised and are causing injury to JCB's business and to UK industry. Oliver Griffiths, who is the TRA chief executive, said, our investigations will examine whether excavators from China are being sold into the UK at unfair prices because of dumping and subsidisation, and whether we need remedies to protect the UK economy. JCB, not surprisingly, has welcomed that probe into the alleged dumping. The CEO, Graham McDonald, said there is clear evidence of unfair competitive practices in relation to aggressive and subsidised pricing of tracked excavators imported from China. We want to see a swift and clear resolution to this urgent matter so that a competitive level playing field is restored for all UK-based manufacturers who invest heavily in the development of world-leading products. All of which, cut a long story short, JCB and probably others believe that subsidized Chinese machines are being sold cheap here in the UK, as I say, to gain a foothold and to establish market share. I have this morning, after a bit of outreach, I've seen this morning a list of outline prices for excavators in the 16 to 17 and a half ton class. And the price differential is startling. Only 3 brands, Lugong, Sany, and Sunwood, all Chinese, come in at under £100,000, with one Sany machine being priced at just £84,000. To do the comparison, an equivalent machine from JCB comes in at roughly £111,000, rising to £122,000 for a Komatsu and about £124,000 for a Volvo in the same weight bracket. Now, obviously, from a consumer standpoint, being able to save £30,000 or even £40,000 on the front end, very appealing. I'm sure it is. But as my mum used to say, you get nothing for nothing in this life. Does that mean that you're saving at the outset, but then lose out on residual values when you come to move the machine on? We will be watching that one with interest. And if you are interested in reading more about that investigation, I can tell you when I find the right button, it is there. I'm just posting a link. The link says Chinese dumping. It doesn't. I realize at first glance, it looks like I've written Chinese dumpling. I'm saying Chinese dumping. Go and take a look because the accusation, I know when I was working back on Contract Journal in the late 80s, the anti-dumping investigation against Japanese manufacturers ran for years. It really did. So we're just at the beginning of this one, people. But if you'd like to know more, you can find out more over at the TRA website. Use the link. Chinese dumping, not dumpling.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Now, after all that excitement, what say we head for a relaxing spell down by the river in Latvia, in the company of Kobelco. Right, going to hop over to the chat. Dan Cullen asked if Lugong are Korean. No, they are definitely Chinese. And as Peter McKenna very kindly pointed out, that's where they're based. Luzhu, possibly, in China. Peter also liked the colour of that. Love using Kobelco, built to last. Now, going back to Peter, and going back to the story about anti-dumping, and I've got two comments here, and I'll come back to both. So Peter McKenna says, isn't that what business is about? Why do big businesses not like competition? Surely it would make you think, are we charging too much? Are we charging ourselves out of business? Good question. Jim Turner, morning Jim, kind of says the same thing. It's not dumping, it's converting people to your brand. Once they've been converted and have confidence in the brand, then the manufacturers can put their prices up. It's called playing the long game, or as I'd say, it's catching a sprat to get a mackerel. All of which is a good point. The concern here, and this was not the case back in the Japanese anti-dumping investigation, but it is here. The Chinese manufacturers, and this is the accusation, I think, or this is what lies at the heart of the accusation, is the fact that Chinese manufacturers are directly or indirectly state-owned. So, in other words, they have the ability to subsidize the cost of their machines in order to gain a foothold in overseas territories. Obviously, that the UK is not unique in this. I've seen Lugong and XCMG machines, all over the place. That is the concern, because the likes of JCB do not get a subsidy from the UK. And before anybody asks, I'm aware of the tax investigations, but JCB do not get a subsidy to reduce the price of their machines to their market or into China. So why should? That's the basic understanding of it anyway. Wow. Okay. We've no. I'm sorry. We've just had some comments through on what is the strangest thing you've ever eaten, which is our question of the day. Come back to that at the end. All I would say is, just having watched that Kobelco film, I've now got to wait until summer until I go fishing next, because I'm a fair weather fisherman. I can't bear being cold and wet for that long. So roll on the summer. Never mind Christmas. Let's just fast forward to summer. In the meantime, this. Changing the jaws on a multiprocessor or another type of demolition attachment. Bit of a ball ache, right? Special tools, labor intensive, and always when you're up against the clock or when it's pouring with rain. But what if I told you that job could actually be done in just 15 minutes? Or better still, what if Caterpillar could prove it can be done in 15 minutes? Have a look. I'm absolutely sure that those jaws will still need changing at precisely the wrong time and when the weather is at its very worst, but 15 minutes, better than hours, right? Now, I kind of like to tell myself that I have my finger on the pulse and that I can read an audience. And when I started the story this morning about the anti-dumping investigation against Chinese excavator manufacturers, I rather expected everybody to leap on board and say, "Ah, yes, sketchy Chinese buggers trying to steal part of our market share." And not true. Well, obviously, we've had Peter and Jim already questioning things, and now we've got Mick Norton. Good morning, Mick, who says, the acceptance or non-acceptance of Chinese steel products will determine the price tag differences on Chinese excavator brands and their UK competitors. If Chinese steel meets BS 4449, suck it up, snowflakes. It's market forces. By the way, a third of rebar in the UK, or used in the UK, is imported from China. The pro-Chinese lobby is out in force. Let's have a look. I believe anything not manufactured in Britain should have a lot of import tax on it. Excuse me. That way we boost British manufacturing. Also, if we want to keep China down, just put an environmental tax on their imported goods, seeing as they are one, if not the worst, of the top polluting countries. Fair point. Fair point. And I do think that adds some balance. Although, again, I was watching a thing the other night which reckons that the UK, we're talking about the need for sustainability, and I'm a firm believer in it. And I've amended some of my own practices, both in business and in my personal life, because of my concerns over sustainability and its impact or potential impact on my children, my grandchildren, and great grandchildren, should I live long enough to see them. However, somebody has done the maths. Apparently, the UK contributes something like 2% of the carbon of the world. 2%. Whereas the likes of your China and your India and your America, 10, 15, 20%. We still need to do things. We do still need to do things. But, I think the others need to take their role a little bit more seriously. Now, I'm going to go for a stroll in a minute. Come with me. We'll be right back after this.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Couple of things before I get into the next film. I'm going to say this one from Peter McKenna, who says it's high time in our technological world that they made changing parts on attachments a hell of a lot easier. 100% agree. 100% agree. And Peter has also said, when I press the right button, morning Austin Wilkinson, come on in and join the chat. And Addy Darvell has said, morning Austin Wilkinson. Unless he says something I can't see him because I'm looking at a different screen to you guys. But Austin, if you're here, good morning, mate. I haven't seen you for bloody ages. Hope you're fitting well. Still watching what you're doing from afar, but hope you're fitting well, mate. Now, as you know, I left here immediately after yesterday's show and headed for London, the London Build exhibition, in fact. Here's a very quickly assembled film of my visit.
As you can see, I'm here at the London Build exhibition in Olympia in London. Unusual exhibition for me. There's no moving equipment, no plants, nothing like that. And to be honest, before I came I was expected to be quite bored. I had a few meetings that I needed to attend. I was expecting to be a bit bored by the rest of it. But one of the things that this show has really reminded me of is just the sheer number of people that is employed within the demolition industry. There are hundreds of stands here, all manned by multiple people. There are thousands upon thousands of visitors, all milling around in the aisles and in the coffee shops, and none of that would happen if it weren't for construction. Take a look around. Would I come back to London Build? If I had meetings to attend, I probably would. Other than that, maybe not. But it has served as an absolutely fantastic and very timely reminder of just how big and important the construction industry is to the UK economy.
Yeah, I've already said it, but I want to say it again. Really timely reminder of just how many of us rely upon the construction industry for our livelihood. There was everything on display at that show, from tech used to design houses and commercial buildings, right through to the fire protection to keep those buildings safe, and sanitary ware to finish the buildings off. Hard to see the wood for the trees sometimes, I think, when you're so closely allied to the sector as you are and I am. But yesterday afternoon really was time well spent. And as I've already mentioned, that he is here in the chat. I did meet up with Neil Edwards, and I did ask you about the current prospects for the construction sector in Wales. And he did say, and I am paraphrasing, crap. He didn't put it quite so politely, but it not looking good. But I have to say, and I say it after every exhibition I ever attend, I always view exhibitions not just because of what's on display, but as a barometer of the industry. And I would say, if that was a barometer, you'd have to say the UK construction industry, particularly the bit of it that resides in London, doing really quite nicely. Thank you very much. Absolutely jam-packed, and a good day out, or good afternoon out. Would I rush back? The stands themselves, with a few notable exceptions, not really my thing and not really our thing. I realise that. But as a reminder of just what construction's all about, yeah, well worth it. So, some of this now.
If you would like to buy a limited edition Break Fast show sticker, head on over to buymeacoffee.com/demolition news/extras.
And we're going to end the main part of this morning's show on the subject of autonomy once again. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I'd like you to meet Tara. Now, I've seen those machines up close. In fact, unless I'm very much mistaken, I've actually seen them on that very circuit up at Eskilstuna. And I have to say, I was mightily impressed, not just by the autonomy and the electric power, although that's impressive, but I was probably most impressed by the fact that they've rethought the entire haulage process, switching big trucks for a number of smaller ones. Be interested to get your take on that. Be interested to get your take on the demise of McCormack Demolition. Be interested to get your take on this anti-dumping investigation into Chinese excavator manufacturers, and anything else that takes your fancy. I'm going to wrap up this morning's show, and then I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into the chat to see what you're all saying today. If you can't stick around for that, then please stay safe, look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Have a good day, have an even better weekend. But if you do have the time and the inclination, please would you be so kind as to stick around, because the crack will begin immediately after this final word from our key show sponsor. Now, I'm going to go back to the beginning of the chat in just a second, but I do need to answer one. Dan Cullen says, was there any freebies there yesterday? I'm sure there were. I wasn't looking. I'll tell you, I was there, I was there for about 4.5 hours. I spent about an hour doing interviews and being interviewed, and I spent about an hour kicking around with Neil Edwards, chewing the fat, catching up. And then the rest of the time I was just wandering around. So yes, there were freebies. I came back with nothing. And I will also, this is how much I suffer for you people. I was at the show, as I say, I left here. I got up yesterday morning, made myself a cup of coffee, came in and did this show. And until I got home last night, I didn't have a single thing to drink and a single thing to eat. See, I suffer for my art. You have no idea. Let's have a look. let me have a look. Let's go back to the very, very beginning. And first off the mark was the quizmaster himself, Mr. Gary Muirhead. Good morning, Mark. Good morning, guys. Happy Friday, everyone. Yeah, happy Friday. We made it through another one, and we're almost at Christmas. Not quite, but, you know, it's looming on the horizon. I will very quickly remind you, and I'm hoping I'm getting the dates in the right order. On the 6th of December, we're doing our prediction show, wrapping up last year's predictions and doing some for the next year. I've got a horrible feeling some of those predictions may relate to the demise of certain demolition companies. I probably won't end up naming them, but... and then on the 13th of December, we will be doing our Dig Fat Quiz of the Year. That's Dig with a D, Quiz of the Year. So please join us if you possibly can. There is Peter McKenna, who was quick off the mark this morning, Peter. Good morning, Peter. Hope you're fit and well, or as well as somebody with a nickname Sick Note possibly can be. Glenn Johnston's joined us. Morning, Glenn. How are you, my friend? Glad to see you here again. Peter McKenna, how was your trip, Mark? It was very good. Yeah, it was very good. I have to say, as I say, aside from the fact that I was nil by mouth the entire day, which is not my normal style of things. Journey into London was fine. Journey out of London was fine. And London Build, very good. Very good. As I say, the stuff, what was on show, not really my bag, although I do know a few of the people at some of those stands and that kind of thing. Obviously good to catch up with Neil Edwards, with Carly Northwood, who was in the chat earlier this week, and also with my old mate Matt Malloy, who was there filming, doing lots of stuff for his new magazine. I'll be telling you more about that. Not really directly linked to us, but kind of. I'll be telling you more about that in the coming weeks. So no, good to catch up with them. But as I say, the one thing that really struck me about that exhibition, and I think more so than perhaps Plant Works or the Exec Hire Show, because that is so niche down, because it is an industry like plant within an industry, plant hire within an industry, construction. It's kind of so focused, you don't see the wood for the trees. Whereas with this, because everything was so broad, as I say, everything from CAD design systems for actually creating the designs for a house or a commercial building or a tower block, right the way through to the products that you finish the building off with. It was almost like, here is the whole industry writ large, and it really was absolutely fascinating and really surprising just how broad it is. And you know, I think maybe the juxtaposition of that, when you see how big and important construction is to the UK economy, and then I came home and was tipped the wink about McCormack Demolition going into administration. One hand washes the other. I don't want any demolition companies. I don't want any companies to go into liquidation, to be perfectly honest. But when a demolition company goes into administration, the immediate thought is obviously with the founders who have put blood, sweat and tears into that company, the employees who have almost certainly done absolutely nothing wrong and then potentially find themselves unemployed right in the run up to Christmas. But then the wider impact on the supply chain, you know, the people that are supplying them with goods and materials and that kind of thing. Yeah, sorry old state of affairs. And if anybody from McCormack Demolition is watching, I'm wishing them all the very best and hope to see them back in action very soon. Here's Andy Darvell. Morning, Andy. As I said, hope all went well yesterday. Gary Muirhead, like to congratulate the Worthing Advertiser for reaching a milestone. They've now got 5 subscribers. What would they do with all that fame, eh? I bet they're already at the point where they're eating in better restaurants and not speaking to their old friends because they're somehow beneath them. Mark Whiting's here as well. Morning all. Good morning to you as well, Mark. Chris Ford is here. Morning, Sodbusters. This Sod's busting your gut today, as you should be. But good morning, Chris. There is Neil Edwards. Always good to catch up with Neil. And as I say, finger on the pulse. And I have to say, you know, bearing in mind all that's been going on, we weren't actually aware of the McCormack Demolition thing when I met up with Neil yesterday. But bearing in mind all the doom and gloom about the place, to meet up with Neil, and as I said yesterday, the Builders Conference has recorded 3 billion quid's worth of new contract awards in the last or in a period of 7 days. That's really, really upbeat. Now, it might be a glitch. Don't get carried away. Don't go and buy the Ferrari quite yet. It might yet be a glitch. But 3 billion in 7 days, that's good news. That is good news. And, you know, as I say, given the current state of the economy, the political landscape here in the UK and the world in general, I will grab and hold on to any good news I can possibly get my hands on. So thanks, Neil. Dan Cullen says, top of the morning. Yeah, top of the morning to you as well. Peter McKenna doing backup history of the day. 2014, according to Dutch scientists, a single 10-second kiss can transfer as many as 80 million bacteria. The research was published in the journal Microbiome. 10-second kiss, 80 million bacteria. Worth it. Worth every single one of the bacteria. Listen, I'm still in. Not necessarily with you lot, but with the correct partner. Let's move on. The question of the day came from Gary Muirhead, as it so often does. What is the strangest thing you've eaten? And as I said, I've done alligator, I've done snake. Wouldn't necessarily rush back for the snake, but I'd eat the alligator out of choice. If it were on the menu, I would eat it out of choice. And I've done. There used to be a butcher's close by here that did weird and wonderful meat. So I've done antelope and buffalo and all of that. But yeah, alligator, really, really good. Dan Cullen apparently is still having problems with his connection. Now, in 1970, Stephanie Rahn became the Sun newspaper's first page 3 girl. 1970. Wow. Same year that the computer mouse was patented. I'm sure the two things weren't connected, but interesting. But 1970. And what is it now? 10 years or so since the Sun did away with page 3? Probably somewhat belated, given the PC world that we live in. Now, Neil Edwards has sent me a link about a Construction Index article that apparently makes final payment dates optional. That doesn't sound good. I'm going to have a very close look at that. Peter McKenna says, worm and slug stew on a survival course at high school. You just went into the lead there, Peter. My fish eggs, complete with little fish inside, pale into insignificance. I'm not absolutely sure I could eat a slug. I could probably down a worm. I'd have to be quite hungry, or it would have to be stir-fried or something. But a slug, I can kind of feel it in my mouth just talking about it. Don't fancy that one bit. Good morning, says Ken Hatcher, who has the mixed bag of weather plus a crap market to contend with. Morning, Ken. Thank you for joining us. I said we had Tara on the show. Chris Ford says Tara. Sounds a bit like a goodbye, a bit like sex and travel. Okay. My mum always said ta-ra when saying goodbye. This might be a London thing. Can't help it. That's where I'm from. Does anyone remember mums or grandmothers or aunts when they spotted somebody on the other side of the road and rather than shouting their name, "Oi, Jean," or whatever it might be, they did a thing? I can't believe I'm about to do this on the show. My mum and my grandmother both used to do a thing that went, ooh. It wasn't ooh, it was ooh. What was that about? Is that a London thing? Did your aunt do that? Did your mum do it? I'd like to know. Peter McKenna sounds utterly delicious. Andy Darvell, he's down for the worm and slug stew. You're on your own, mate. Dan Cullen, my connection's all messed up. What can I tell you? There were a lot of green faces when the ex-SAS bloke told everyone what they'd eaten. Oh, we let you eat it before he told you what it was. What a swine, eh? And there's Ken Hatcher saying, thanks, Neil, for the good news. Such as it is. Jim Turner is in the house. Good morning. Dan Cullen says he cannot say the strangest thing he's eaten. Probably just as well. Let's have a look. And Dan is also saying good morning to the cohorts. How are you all? Gary Muirhead. Question of the day. Octopus. It was a nightmare to cook. Every time you put it in the pot, they would turn the gas off. Now, I realise you're taking the mix somewhat. Octopus. Love octopus. Grilled octopus, stewed octopus. Yeah, love all that. Octopus. I had an octopus. Well, I've had it several times. But I had an octopus salad in Italy once, and I had an octopus salad in Sardinia once, and it would rank among one of the very nicest things I've ever put in my pie hole. And I put some stuff in my pie hole over the years. Now, Itang. Itang is delicious. We have a Korean restaurant in Preston that serves it. What in the name of all that's holy is Itang? Anybody got any ideas? Peter, enlighten us. What is Itang? Question of the day. We will be having cheese and strawberry jam sandwiches. Drop the lunchbox, empty fridge Friday. Cheese and strawberry jam. Yeah, I could probably get on board with that. I mean, I like cheese and honey. That would be my first go-to. Yeah, no, I mean, I wouldn't do it out of choice, but I can see where you're coming from. Peter McKenna says, squirrel is fantastic, and lots of top restaurants are now serving it. Is it? And are they? I've not been to any of these top restaurants with squirrel on the menu. And are they bold enough to actually call it squirrel? Or do they try and bury the fact that it is what it is? Like calling dead pig pork, because apparently we're too squeamish to say the word pig, and calling cow beef. And yet, bizarrely, we're okay with eating chicken, which is exactly what it is. We're a weirdo breed, aren't we? Dan Cullen says, how did the show go yesterday? Yeah, went very, very well indeed. As I say, not really my usual fare. The stands were largely of no interest to me whatsoever, but as an overall finger on the pulse of the construction industry, well worth a visit, and came away feeling pretty damn upbeat, actually. Had a good day. All was good. And there is my wife backing me up. Yes, question of the day. We tried snake in New Orleans. We did, and it was okay. Not a problem with that at all. It went well. Did you not watch it when you got home? Not sure. I can't eat next door's pet rabbit. I did order octopuses by mistake one day. That's no mistake. That's a good idea. But rabbit, yeah. I have a bit of a thing about this. I mean, I like the taste of rabbit anyway. But I've got a butcher's about, I don't know, a 3.5-4 minute walk away from my front door. And they sell pork and beef and chicken and lamb. And they have all the different cuts of meat, and they have tandoori lamb chops and all. You know, they have traditional British. If you ask them for pheasant or grouse, they can get it for you, all of that kind of thing. But rabbit, no. And bearing in mind, if I drive 5 minutes from my front door and I'm quiet enough, chances are I'll spot a rabbit. And I'm not going to go and shoot it, but if somebody were to peel it for me and stick it on a plate, I'd be more than happy to eat it. Why do we not eat our own wildlife when everywhere else in the world seems to? Mick Norton is in the house. Good morning to you, Mick, and I'm going to come back to some of your comments in just a moment, but great to have you here, as it always is. Let's have a look. Dan Cullen says, is Lugol not Korean? No, they are most certainly Chinese, because that's all that Chinese scrap is worth, says Andy Bullock. See, the bizarre thing is, and as I say, I was kind of expecting a bit more of that kind of thing. The first Chinese machines that I saw, and I'm probably going back 3, if not 4, Baumers. So I'm going back maybe 12 years or even more than that. And the first Chinese machines that I saw were terrible. Absolutely terrible. They were square, they were boxy, they looked like if you even looked at them the wrong way, bits would have fallen off or they would have rusted. But we've come a long way. Some of the Lugong machines that I've seen most recently, absolutely top notch, and the Sunward machines that we played around with at Plantworks, not just me saying it, I was actually speaking to somebody just this morning who had been out for a test drive on a Sunward machine yesterday, funnily enough, and said it was absolutely brilliant. So the machines themselves are, I don't think you could come into an established market and a mature market like the UK without something that wasn't up to par. Is your average Sany machine as good as a Volvo or a Komatsu or a Liebherr? No, and nobody's expected to be. And you know, trying to draw the comparison when you think about cars. Is Is a Chinese-built car as good as a BMW, a Mercedes? No, you get what you pay for. But I do believe that the Chinese equipment has come an awful long way. The problem, obviously, is, and I'm going to put that up, there is a link to it, and it doesn't say Chinese dumpling, although now I've said it, I quite fancy one. The problem here is the fact that a lot of the Chinese manufacturers are either directly or indirectly state-owned. So you've got, up until very recently, we had an absolutely thriving, booming Chinese economy. And if the Chinese state, the Chinese government decided we would quite like a slice of the UK excavator market, so for the next 3 years we will sell our machines at 20-30% less than everybody else, they could do that and get the foothold. And there's somebody, and I will come back to that comment in just a moment, if you've got a big enough foothold and you can prove the quality of those machines. I mean, and again, I'll go back to this. It's a bad example to use given all that's going on with Squibb Group at the moment, but Squibbs was one of the first to invest in Lugong machines. And at the time, it was a cause for raised eyebrows. Chinese machine in demolition, but they bought one, and then they bought another one, and then they bought two more, and then they bought two more after that, and then repeat business. So the machines themselves, quite clearly, and I'm sure price will have a factor in this, but the machines were quite clearly up to the job of the demolition industry, because Squibbs and Kelprays and Metro and Kent Demolition all bought Lugong machines, not just once, but multiple times. But because we are still early doors, not so much with Lugong, because Lugong has been here for quite a while, but Sany, relative newcomer in this iteration, XCMG have literally just pitched up. Sunwald, again, have been and gone and been and come back again. What is the residual value? Where you have to think, bearing in mind what Mick Norton says, and we'll come to his comment in a moment, all of these machines, when you scratch beneath the surface, I mean, obviously most of them are using, both the European machines and the Chinese machines are built using at least some Chinese steel. And the components themselves are largely shared. Hydraulic pumps on a Chinese machine might be the same as a British machine or an American machine or a German machine. The engines will be shared. So where is that price differential coming from? And if that price differential is through a subsidy from the Chinese government, or because the machines themselves do not have the same residual value, is that good for the consumer? Is that good for the market? That's the question mark. And as I say, if you'd like to read more, you can. Chinese dumping over TRA opens new investigations into excavators from China. Use the link. Go and take a look. And Peter McKenna says, isn't that what business is about? Well, why do big businesses not like competition? There is a large degree of that. It would make you think, are we charging too much? Are we charging ourselves out of business? There is a bit of that, and I'm sure that the manufacturers will be keeping an eye on that. But you'd also have to think, bearing in mind we have TV adverts for things, I can never remember which supermarket it is, but you get Asda price checking themselves against Aldi or Lidl or whatever it might be. Excavator manufacturers will be doing exactly the same. And I do think there will be brands like maybe Caterpillar and like Liebherr who will always charge a premium price because, frankly, they are making a premium product. But when you get down to that mid-range, and as I say, when you're talking about a machine of around about 110,000 pounds, but you can pick up the Chinese equivalent for 84, that is a big price differential. That's what is it? Nearly 40,000. Well, 40,000 pounds on a 111,000 pound machine. That's a big deal. Now, if that machine is stripped back down to its bare bones and it doesn't have all the bells and whistles and the telematics and the after sales support, and buyer beware, but if you're willing to take that risk, then fine and dandy. But if that comes as a result of the Chinese state government trying to buy part of the UK excavator market, not so keen on that. And Ken Hatcher says, I remember about this levy in the 1980s with Japan. It was quite surprising, actually, or quite interesting at the time, because the Japanese manufacturers arrived. Let me think. Komatsu, Hitachi, Sumitomo, there's probably somebody else as well, arrived all at once and stole a bit of market share. even though the machines were considered lesser quality than the European-built equivalent. But after they'd been here for a few years and proved they weren't going away, we had the whole anti-dumping investigation. That, as I say, it must have gone on for 5 years, probably, a bit like the CMA investigation, to be perfectly honest. So yeah, be interesting to watch how this one plays out. Peter McKenna says, Kobelco, very pleasant colour. I agree. It is my favourite. I've given it a lot of thought. I do like the Senavogan green, but I'm going with the Kobelco colour all day long. The Americans don't know what they're missing. A brand that's built to last, and therein lies the issue. You know, I think if you were to ask pretty much anybody that is currently watching this show, if you were to, let's just say money is no object. No, I'll do it another way. Let's just say you win the lottery, you've got 150 grand sat in your bank account, and you are setting yourself up as an owner-operator in an excavator. Bearing in mind you're going to be in that thing 10, 11 hours a day for the next 5 years, what are you choosing? I'd be very surprised if anybody said they were choosing a Chinese brand. And that, I think, is the difference. Personally, I'd be Volvo and Liebherr all day long. It's my business. I want my office to be as good as possible, so I would be going one of those. But as I say, I'd be very surprised if anybody immediately selected the Chinese. But please, if I'm wrong, shoot me down in flames. That's what I'm here for. It's not dumping, it's converting people to your brand, says Jim Turner. Once they've been converted, have confidence in the brand, then the manufacturers can put their prices up. It's called playing the long game. Or as I'd say, it's catching the sprat to get a mackerel. Yeah, absolutely right. Although, I will go back to Lugong, and Lugong has been here for quite some time. How long has Lugong been active in the UK excavator business? 10 years now? How long do you use that sprat? And how many mackerel do you need to make it worth your while to put your prices up? I'd like to know. Chris Ford says, JCB manufactures machines in India. How does that price compare? As far as I'm aware, JCB manufactures in India, mainly for the Indian subcontinent. I don't believe they are sending those machines back to Europe, as far as I'm aware. So I don't think there's a direct comparison. And again, I don't know what the situation is with the Indian-built machines in terms of their pricing and everything else. But I know from past experience, people like Caterpillar would make machines specifically for certain regions of the country, of the world rather, and they would be downgraded. So, you know, certain bits of Africa back in the day weren't so concerned about emissions and machine cabs and seating and that kind of thing. They were pretty much laid back about that. So those machines were built specifically for that market. I believe that's the case with JCB. If anybody knows any differently, please let me know. Hence why Sony and Lugong are being snapped up by plant hire companies here in the UK, Jim. Yeah, it is true. It is very true. But as I say, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? It will play out in the fullness of time. Unbelievable how stupid some people are. Just had a text from a random guy, says Dan Cullen. Sent me his license, national insurance number, UTR number, and passport to get on groups. I called him a twat. Seems a little harsh for a Friday morning, Dan. I don't know. My reading on that is maybe the guy's desperate for work. I'm not sure I'd be wanting to give out all that information, but if you're desperate for work, you know, maybe. Now, going back to the question of the day, what is the strangest thing you've eaten? Question of the day, Andy Dovell says, a still beating heart from a large pollock fish I caught in the Atlantic when working on the boat. This was only my second day on the boat, a bit of a crew initiation. Wasn't too bad, actually. Still beating heart. Yeah, one of the things that I didn't get to try, and I think, I'm fairly sure they do it in China, but I think Japan do it as well, is the beating heart of a cobra. Didn't do that. Would I? Yeah, I'd give it a go. I did eat the worm out of a bottle of tequila in Mexico once. Admittedly, I had consumed the entire bottle of tequila by that point at that point in time, and I was feeling no pain. But yeah, Peter McKenna says, delicious. Beating Pollock Heart for me, please. Mick Norton, I said I'd come back to him. The acceptance or non-acceptance of Chinese steel products will determine the price tag differences on Chinese excavator brands and their UK competitors. If Chinese steel meets BS 4449, suck it up, snowflakes, he says. It's the market forces. By the way, a third of rebar used in the UK is imported from China. I'm assuming when it's imported from China, it too has to meet with certain British standards. I'm assuming that's the case. I hope that's the case. Okay. Peter McKenna, me and Peter are on the same wavelength, apparently. He says, he's keen, Dad. Give him a break. Lots of us are struggling for work at the moment. He might have jumped the gun a tad, but calling him a twat wasn't called for. I thought you were a better man than that. Dan is a better man than that. Got out of bed the wrong side. That's all I can say. Andy W. says, I can change the jaws on a Demolition MQP 25 about that time, and they look like they're doing it in perfect conditions. All these videos that we show you are pretty much in perfect conditions, unless I've been out and shot it myself, in which case the muddier the better. But you're absolutely right. Jim Turner, and I'm fairly sure there will be people agreeing with this. I believe anything not manufactured in Britain should have a lot of import tax put on it. That way we boost British manufacturing. Also, if we want to keep China down, just put an environmental tax on their imported goods, seeing as they are one, if not one of the worst, top polluting countries. The only problem with that, and yes, listen, I'm not even a Brit. I'm an English guy. You know, I'm a proud Englishman. I would like to boost British manufacturing as well, but there isn't much of it left. You know, if you want a British-built excavator, you've got one choice. No, that's not true. If you want a British-built excavator, you've got two choices, as far as I'm aware. You've got JCB and you've got Komatsu. But because Komatsu is British-built, doesn't necessarily mean it's a British machine. And I know Komatsu, if you're watching, and I think the Komatsu UK operation up in Berkeley is brilliant, fantastic, marvellous. But it is a Japanese manufacturer making its machines in England. There is just one Brit making machines, and that's JCB. That would limit your choice somewhat. It's high time in our technological world that they made changing parts and attachments a hell of a lot easier. Totally agree. And just while we're on that subject, I realise nobody in the technological world is listening to a damn word I say, but we are on the cusp of seeing more and more and more electric machines out in the field. Please, can we have just one charger? Please, just the one. I don't want an Apple Android VHS Betamax thing. I would just like electric excavators to come with one size hole and one size charger, please. I don't believe that's too much to ask. Austin Wilkinson apparently is lurking on the very cusp of this show, but he hasn't, as far as I can tell, hasn't actually set his foot in the chat. But good morning, Austin. Great to see you here. Mick Norton says in Thailand in 1967, baked flying squirrel with crushed red ant sauce, washed down with half a dozen cans of tiger beer. Whoa. Baked flying squirrel. I mean, if you're going to have flying squirrel, you want it baked, do you not? Do you? I don't know. But flying squirrel, they're the ones with the whole bat wing thing going on, aren't they? Can you eat that? Does it go like crackling if you bake it? I kind of feel like it would go crispy. How the hell did we get here? What, did you eat the flying squirrel wing? I know it's not technically a wing, but did you eat that? What was it like texturally? Never mind this. I can't imagine that you can describe what baked flying squirrel actually tasted like, but was it crispy? I'd like to know. Going back to all things environmental, Jim Turner says, we're all fleas on the same dog. Speak for yourself. No, we are all fleas. Why buy goods from polluting nations when our manufacturers struggle to make profits because of the environmental restrictions our governments have signed up to? Here, Jim. Here, indeed. Dan Cullen says, looks like London Build was a great show. Yeah, listen, as I say, not really my cup of tea. It was more ideal home exhibition than it was plant works, but it was good. Wow, you look younger without the dark glasses, Mark. Is that true? Could that possibly be true? Should I switch? No, because of the eye thing. But thank you. Looks like you lost years ago. It's a universal thing. I may have to switch to the other glasses. Busy old place. No, it really was very, very busy. And certainly the show actually closed at 4:30, and yesterday was the final day. It's only a 2-day exhibition. Yesterday was the final day. And at 4:30, I was still being filmed. And there was a mass exodus. And man alive, it was, Jesus, where did all these people come from? Dan Cullen says, wonder, was I mentioned? Were you mentioned? Not sure. Yes, there is. For some reason, we've got a bit of a broken connection between here and LinkedIn, but I can tell you that is Carly over from Job Matcher. Lovely seeing you, Mark. Great to meet you, Neil. Thank you very much indeed, Carly. Always good to see you. Always good to spend time in your company. Love you to death, madam. Peter McKenna says construction is dying a death here in Lancashire, Merseyside, and Manchester. It's abysmal. It is mighty tough out there. It really is. Mick Norton says, once upon a time, the JCB product was 100% manufactured in the UK. With that figure now less than 40%, I wonder how many JCB components now start their shelf life in China. See, now, I wonder, bearing in mind state-owned, and bearing in mind the fact that the Chinese they're a law unto themselves. If JCB kick up a stink that costs the Chinese manufacturers' market share here in the UK, could we see a situation where the Chinese steel makers go, well, you're not playing ball in your country, so why should we play ball with you? I wonder. I wouldn't put it past them. Were there any freebies yesterday? I'm sure there were. I got nothing. Dan Cullen, no, there were no bloody hats. No, there were hats. There were hats. I just didn't want them. Perfect idea, even better with a diesel engine. I think that was the autonomous machines from Volvo. Tara. Reminds me of my robot truck, but with one less axle from the 80s. Can anyone remember what they were called? You could also attach a trailer to them. Robot truck from the 80s. Racking my brains and can't come up with anything. Only thing on that is no ordinary mechanic would be able to work on that autonomous. Yeah, it's very true. Yeah, very true. Can you imagine? And frankly, I can. Not long before CSCS start pumping out autonomous and electric tickets. Yes, we need you to prove that you can drive a machine that you can't drive. I can see it now. Peter says, we don't have mechanics nowadays. We have technicians, as everything is based around computers on most vehicles. You're absolutely right. So take it Gary Muirhead didn't leave for the 4 subscribers. Well, as far as I know, he didn't leave for the 4 subscribers, but they've now hit 5. So I would imagine Gary is currently rethinking his allegiance as we speak. This show could well be the last time we see him because, the big ticket 5 subscriber outfit are just down the road. Peter McKenna says, exactly, mate. Andy W says, Peter McKenna, exactly, mate. The very first thing a fitter does is plug in the laptop to see why the machine is sick. Yeah, and even that, with modern telematics being what they are, sometimes you don't even need to plug it in because the excavator has already picked up the phone, picked up the phone, phoned the dealer and said, Houston, we have a problem. Can you sell me a new oil filter and part XYZ421? And then the dealer arrives knowing exactly what the problem is. Yeah. Big shows like that are for networking. Did you take any Breakfast Show stickers with you, Mark? No, I didn't. They were not my audience. They may have been my audience. I mean, in absolute fairness, I'll do 2 versions of this because I did find this quite funny. I was recognised on a couple of stands. One guy, I think I'd met him in passing before, and then another guy recognised me in the aisles. But I was being filmed, and there were 2 young ladies who I think they were Polish or Russian or something like that, and they were watching very intently, watching me being interviewed. And when the interview was over, they came over and said, "Can I ask, who are you and why were you being interviewed?" And I explained who I was and what I did and everything else. turns out that one of them was an architect, and her sister, her younger sister, was actually a budding journalist. And I then had to explain for the next 10 minutes how I ended up being a journalist in the first place. So I'm kind of expecting her CV to arrive on my desk anytime now. But yeah, two people recognised me, and then two people didn't know who the bleeding hell I was and wondered why I had the nerve to stand in front of a camera. That's my life summed up right there. Peter McKenna says they don't always get it right either, Andy. It amazes me how they can get things wrong with the computer supposedly making life easier. Very true. Chris Ford says, gone are the days when all you need to fix most things was a screwdriver, adjustable spanner, large and small, and a big hammer. Yeah, what was that? The old adage? It's £100 to fix that machine, and I only hit it with a sledgehammer, and it was, what was it? It was £1 to hit it, but a £99 to know where to hit it, or something like that. I can never remember. Peter McKenna on the big hammer. The big hammer still works, battering the hell out of a computer when it goes haywire. I've never done that to a computer, but I can tell you I did once rip a computer scanner off the desk and hurl it into the bin. And when I say the bin, I mean I've got a bin down here the side of me. I don't mean I did that. I mean a full-on, for those of you of a certain age, a full-on Martin Chivers across the office. Awful bloody things. Did the kiss involve tongues? We're going back to the 80 million bacteria transferred in the 10-second kiss. Well, I hope it did. Listen, if I'm going to pick up 80 million bacteria, I would very, very much like it to involve tongues. Thank you. Question of the day. I will try most things at least once. As somebody once said to me, I go everywhere twice, and the second time is to apologise. It's a rule I've lived by for ever since. My other half says my mum always bought tongue for sandwiches, which is a bit of a double up. The tongue for sandwiches are obviously the strangest thing that she's eaten, but bearing in mind we've just had 80 million bacteria being transferred by kissing with tongues or possibly without. So thank you for that, Ruth. You've answered two questions at the same time. It's almost like we planned this. I've heard of a plant hire firm ordered a load of new plant for a huge project taking off in 24 in the UK. Good. Question of the day. Peter McKenna says Scotties have an eat and drink challenge where they try to outdo each other. When in a local country and Western establishment a few years ago, two Scotties gave two girls a pint glass and sent them to fill up with a number 1 and a number 2. The girls passed back the glasses full to the brim, and yes, you guessed it, they both drank and ate the lot. Don't think I'll be bothering with breakfast now. Thank you very much indeed for that. Itang, apparently, Itang is fish egg soup. Fish egg soup. Chris Ford, I wonder if eating slug is like eating scampi. I've never eaten slug, but I'm going to say no. No. Scampi, perfectly acceptable. Slug, nah. Question of the day. Jim Turner says dog biscuits, squirrel, eel, and ostrich. I've not done squirrel, but I've done all the other three, and I'm not the biggest fan of jellied eel, but hot eel, fine. Smoked eel, fantastic. I've eaten ostrich, very lean, very nice. Dog biscuits, as a dare. Who hasn't? It was tough as old boots, much like eating whelks, Chris. Yeah. See, I like, being a Londoner, we do like our cockles and our winkles and our whelks. And whelks, by and large, I mean, I've had kind of fried whelks in overseas destinations, and they're fantastic. But every once in a while, you get a whelk by the seaside, those little polystyrene pots with malt vinegar and white pepper on top, and you get one, and you could be chewing it for days. It's just like chewing gum, which never goes away. I like Spiller's shapes and Bonio, Jim. Yeah, aren't they tasteless? I can't believe we're discussing consuming dog biscuits, but they've got no flavour whatsoever, have they? They all taste like they could do with salt or quite possibly sugar, because your brain is saying, well, this is biscuit, but it's got nothing about it. Peter McKenna says stir-fried crickets. I'd give that a go. Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with that. I'm reading a book on conspiracy, and they're saying JFK was assassinated, was conspired by... What? Assassination was conspired by the Koch. coat as he was becoming anti-American, so it says. Was inspired by the coat. Not sure what that means. If you can let us know. Peter McKenna once tried Bonio years ago. Couldn't see why the dog made all the fuss. Yeah, I've got, both of my dogs are brother and sister, and they're both, 11, 12 years old now. They're boxer dogs, and they do like a biscuit. So we've got a biscuit tin in our front room. And the dog, not the bitch, but the dog, now believes that if he leaves the room or if I leave the room, upon returning, he deserves a biscuit. And their biscuits are awful. They've yet to enjoy the simple pleasures of a rich tea or a bourbon. Can you imagine a boxer dog with a bourbon? It'd be like crack, I'm sure. Peter McKenna says, a farmer on YouTube has a 15-year-old Kobelco and never misses a beat. Everyone keeps telling him he needs a new one. In his reply, it works. Why should I spend money I don't need to spend? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Totally agree. Fox Brothers Plant Hire from Blackpool are changing most of its machines to Lugong. Small and large machines. There's a lot of it about. Peter McKenna also says Fox Brothers always had case and cap machines before changing to Chinese manufacturers. Not much difference between buying an American machine than pricing a, dare I say it, an English machine. Totally agree. Look at Komatsu. I'm on almost 10,000 hours and it's still doing its job in demolition, and it's a demand in the industry on plant. It is. I mean, it is. Demolition and waste, I would say, are probably the ultimate test in terms of equipment durability and longevity. And Andy Darvell agrees. Dan Cullen, demo is one of the hardest lives for a machine to have. They can survive doing that work for a year, then they're a fantastic machine. Yeah. Lugong has been in the UK market for 13 years. Yeah, I knew it was quite a while. And Kobelco have been here for 18 years. That feels longer, actually. Gary Muirhead. Gary, thank you very much indeed for the question of the day today, and for getting us onto the consumption of dog biscuits. Have a great weekend, my friend. See you Monday if you're around. Give my best to the family. Lots of cat machines are built in the UK, so that makes it 3, Mark. They don't make excavators here, though, do they? They make their backhoe loaders here? Do they do mini excavators? They may well do, but I think the European plant for excavators is over in France, in Grenoble, if I remember rightly. So I'm sticking with my 2 for now, unless somebody can prove me wrong. Squirrel itself tastes very similar to chicken thigh meat. See, I have a bit of an issue with chicken thighs. Not the taste, the texture. I'm going to apologise to my wife in advance before I say this. I'm a breast man, but only when it comes to chicken. Andy Darvell, yesterday went really well. Paul had a great send-off, some tears and quite a few laughs. That's always a good way to go out, isn't it? One of the best moments was seeing the old white Daimler hearse coming around the corner. Paul requested it, which apparently was hard to source a white hearse. A white hearse. Class act. Well done. I hope you got a good send-off. Dan Cullen says, as we say at home, to 2 man best friends, vice grips on a lump hammer. I always thought man's best friend was his dog, but hey, each to his own. Dan Cullen says, have a fantastic day, lovely weekend, stay safe and happy, enjoy. Thank you very much indeed. I will do precisely that. And where would modern life be without predictive text and auto captions? Okay, and then we finally get to the bottom of it. Apparently JFK was assassinated not by his coat, which would have been really weird, but by the CIA, not his coat. Well, I can't believe anybody is casting aspersions on the fine, upstanding, and completely straight down the line CIA. Can you believe it? And Andy Darvell, I think I'm going to go with Andy's as a final comment. Stay safe, guys. Have a fantastic weekend. You too, Andy, and you too, everybody else. Go forth, enjoy. I'll see you here again on Monday for yet more of this old nonsense. And hopefully this time next week, we may not be talking about eating dog biscuits. Or maybe I'll get a dog biscuit and I'll eat it on the show. If it would drive up a few more, if it could get me from... If it could get somebody from 5 to 6 subscribers, I wonder if they might do that down in the wilds of Worthing. Maybe they would. Maybe we should encourage it. Everybody go and have a fantastic weekend. I'll see you all very soon. All the best.